2 days worth of basketball when it comes to the Memphis Grizzlies. And the man that has been in the middle of it all when it comes to the Grizzlies' perspective is none other than the commercial appeal zone and Locked On Grizzlies zone, Damichael Cole. Damichael, good evening to you. How much fun has it been covering this team and witnessing how well they played over the past 2 nights?
It's been wild, Shawn. Just seeing each night had its own, obstacle. Wednesday, it was Ja Morant being out for the big game on ESPN and all of that hoopla, and then they go and win by 12. And in this game, you find out maybe a couple hours before the game, 3 hours or so before the game, that not only is Ja Morant out again and Killian Tilly is out again. Not only that, but you add on Brandon Clark and Dillon Brooks. Brandon Clark, probably your most, productive big off the bench. And then Dillon Brooks, who is still working his way back because he was out due to injury management. So you look at the starting lineup, and not only do you got Tyus Jones filling in, but you got Zion Williams back in the starting lineup. And then your backup big now is Xavier Tillman. So second night of a back-to-back, you wonder how that will play out. But, man, that back-to-back was almost as flawless as could be.
In case you didn't see either one of the games, I mean, it's very, very simple. The Grizzlies kicked ass. And they kicked it. Kicked ass. But, hey, we'll discuss that in just a moment. But, of course, the games were fun, but a bit of concerning news when it comes to, obviously, the marquee talent that's on the Memphis Grizzlies, Ja Morant. Listen, it's been great to see the narratives of the team without Ja Morant, how well they stood out, played well on ESPN, came back tonight, another historic night. We'll get into all the history in the second segment of the show. But the big news off the court today, and the major news overall, is that Ja Morant, they did some testing on his knee last night during the ESPN recording, and it was revealed that Ja Morant is going to be out for 2 weeks. No structural damage, but they will reevaluate him in 2 weeks. And, of course, that's the great thing about having Damichael as the co-host, is obviously he's there. He's talking with the team, talking with Coach Jenkins. And, Damichael, this is where I think your perspective gets as good as it gets, just your overall perspective of, okay, we now know a timeline. We now know that this isn't just a 1 or 2 game absence. What are your thoughts as you were hearing about this and after a few hours of kind of, soaking it all in when it comes to Ja Morant, and hopefully what will be a quick recovery?
Yeah, the Grizzlies are playing the long game here. This is the long game all the way. From the sounds of it, they could push him. He could play possibly, next week if that was needed. But it sounds like, they want to get him as healthy as possible for the playoffs rather than, this knee injury is bothering him and bothering him and bothering him. And, of course, you know how the playoffs go. Ja Morant will probably be playing 40 minutes game after game after game. The leash in the playoffs, there's not going to be much of one. So once you factor that in, and I asked Taylor Jenkins, in the post-game presser after that win against the Pacers, did he care about, getting the 2 or the 3 seed? And I asked him that question simply because I felt like his answer to that question would determine, would give us an indication on how the Grizzlies will approach this final stretch, even without Ja Morant. He gave a simple answer. He didn't say anything, he didn't give a long, in-depth answer. All he said was no. He doesn't care. He doesn't care if they're the 2 seed. He doesn't care if they're the 3 seed. I guess it's a good thing for him that Golden State doesn't care about the 2 or the 3 seed as well. So factoring all of those things in, they're playing the long game. If they cared more about the 2 seed, you'd probably see him be reevaluated in a week or something like that. But this seems like this decision was strictly that of the medical staff, and Taylor Jenkins just, was in support of it. Ja Morant clearly isn't worried. And, he came out and, tweeted out the Lion King reference, Hakuna Matata, which means no worries. So he tweeted out the reference. But overall, I think, his energy has been good. He was just watching him on the bench the game Wednesday night against the Nets, just really paying attention to just his mannerisms. He was as active, as engaged as he always is. He's not sad. He feels good. I mean, we saw him, running around a little bit in the post-game presser when he goes up to Desmond Bane. And nothing, crazy, but you feel like, he rehabbed. He went to rehab on Thursday, so he wasn't at that game against the Pacers. But overall, I think it's just they're playing the long game. That's the simple answer. This is just, hey, let's reevaluate in 2 weeks. It'll be close to the playoffs. They're not worried about having to ramp him up for the playoffs and all of that because they'll ramp him up as he gets closer. That's what the rehab is for and all of those things. Once it's playoff time, full bore, full speed ahead. Now, we obviously have our questions about, that type of method, but clearly just talking to Taylor Jenkins, he's not too concerned about that.
And I'm sure in the offseason we'll do, as a matter of fact, I plan to do a full podcast about, Ja Morant and, his ailments this year and what it could mean for the future. I'm not meaning that to concern anyone. I just think that it does offer a bit of logic, into the opinions that some have. But one thing that I don't want to, talk about that too much. But one thing that I do want to point out, everybody's talking about how awesome the Grizzlies are without Ja Morant, all this different stuff, all this BS about, it impacts his MVP candidacy. No, it doesn't. Stop that. At the end of the day, the Grizzlies' record without Ja Morant has nothing to do with Ja Morant. It's how special the rest of the team is. But here's the even more important factor in this. There has been multiple occurrences this year where Ja Morant, unfortunately, has ran into injury. But thankfully, because of the trust this franchise has and how deep the roster is, the Grizzlies have been able to be cautious and give Ja the time that he needs to be able to not only overcome the injury, but come back at 100%. And it's due to the fact that this team is so deep, they can still operate without him. That's a byproduct of all this. Ja Morant runs into these ailments. The Grizzlies don't have to push him. It means that there's a higher likelihood he's going to come back at 100%, and it's all in part due to the depth of this team. It's so many layers that the depth of this team benefits the Grizzlies more than it does other teams that don't have that depth.
Yeah, Shawn, I think you can legitimately make an argument for 3 players as being the most important guys for this team. It's not to say who's the best player. Ja Morant is clearly the best player, but you can make an argument and say Jaren Jackson Jr. when he's playing, when he's staying out of foul trouble, when he's making shots, he is the most impactful player for what he does. When he's 6'11", he's guarded by smaller guys. But you also can make an argument, and this is the argument that I've started to kind of lean towards, Shawn. Desmond Bane, he is in that same category. And I'm going to explain why. Because just watching him, the three-point shooting, we've talked about that all year. What he offers with the three-point shooting, spacing the floor. There have been a lot of games we've seen where the Grizzlies will make 10 threes and Desmond Bane will make 4 or 5 and things like that. He's carried them, from that three-point perspective with his shooting through most of the season. But right now, with Ja Morant out, Desmond Bane has picked up the secondary point guard role, and he's flourishing. He said after the game that he's still getting used to it and things like that. But here's the thing: I talked to some people in Richmond, and his hometown, and they were telling me that when they seen Desmond Bane get on the ball playing point guard, what went through their mind was, we're back to the Des that they grew up watching, the Desmond Bane that the people in Richmond, Indiana, seen for years. Him playing point guard. Same thing with the people down at TCU. This is what they saw most of the time. Desmond Bane's ability to play on the ball has really kind of solidified that positioning with Ja Morant out. Tyus Jones is Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones has, been the main component to solidifying that point guard position with Ja Morant out. But in those minutes where where Tyus Jones goes out of the game, Desmond Bane has really played it well, and he gives you more of that scoring guard, a la Ja Morant. And he made some really good passes where he dumped off some passes and got some guys open in that Pacers game. I thought that was really impressive to see just how Desmond Bane has picked that up. But you combine his three-point shooting with the playmaking, now he's playing that secondary point guard role, because if something were to happen to Desmond Bane, you're talking possibly Melton, Kyle Anderson, but it's going to look different in that secondary point guard role. I just don't think you have that option. But I think we go back to I think it was the Bucks, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a couple of away games. You know, Ja Morant kind of had some really wild scoring games during that stretch. I think it was the Bucks, and it may have been Denver, but Desmond Bane, you know, he missed the game in that stretch, and the offense just looked completely different. They did not shoot the ball well. I do remember that pretty good. They did not shoot the ball well. They shot the ball bad. It had to be the Bucks game, and Desmond Bane, you could just see his absence was just clearly, you know, you could see that his absence, you know, was felt. And the thing about it is Desmond Bane's been available pretty much most of this season, so we haven't had the opportunity to see as where, you know, when Ja Morant's out of the game, we see how the Grizzlies play without him. We only have a small sample size of them playing without Desmond Bane. But just like we talk about Jaren Jackson, his two-way potential, and Ja Morant, just, you know, his superstar ability just to make things happen when no one else can. Desmond Bane, the three-point shooting, the shot creating, and the playmaking, he's taking himself to another level as well.
Once again, I believe it's now 24 straight times the Grizzlies have had 25 or more assists and 10 or more threes they have won. They won 24 straight games when they clear those two hurdles, and it's hard to argue that anyone, you know, outside of Ja Morant has more impact on that than Desmond Bane. But if we want to talk impact, we're about to get into history in the absolute making over the past two nights. We're going to discuss that and also a bit more from just, again, the Grizzlies dominating the Pacers in just a second. But before we do, listen, the Sweet 16 is here. And while me and Damichael still are kind of in the doldrums about who's not playing in the Sweet 16, man, what a night it was. There were some upsets. You saw Duke continue on, but shout out to Arkansas and Houston as well as Villanova. The great thing is, though, this is one of the best times of the year when it comes to betting and wagering on sports, and there's no better place to do it. The fastest and easiest place to do that is betonline.net. Again, betonline.net. Check it out today. The fastest and easiest way to bet on sports. Check it out on your laptop or mobile device. When it comes to football or baseball, even though football's not going on, college basketball, pro basketball, baseball, all this different stuff, even Vegas casino games, it doesn't get better than betonline.net. Check it out today. Of course, we want to thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day. But let's talk about just some of the most random things out there outside of college basketball. Damichael, did you hear of a school recently who landed its best quarterback recruit over the past 2 decades? Could you tell me who that school was over the past week that did that?
It's the school. It's my school, Shawn.
What school's that?
It's the balls. It's those balls, and you know, we've had some really good quarterbacks come through there, but we've been starving a little bit lately. So this is really big. I'm excited about it.
I'm telling you this, man. Locked On Balls with Eric Kane, one of my favorite Locked On podcast shows, just because I'm a huge Balls fan. But the point is that after making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen of the day, listen, college sports, there's always something going on. So make sure you check out the Locked On Podcast College show of your choice as your second listen of the day after you check out Locked On Grizzlies. So, Damichael, we got 2 wins in a row, a huge one, a dominant one. I mean, hell, let's be honest with you. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, I would say at the very least, that was a top 10 performance by a duo from an opponent on the FedEx Forum floor that we've seen in history. But what have the Grizzlies done? What have they done to overcome that? And what did they do to overcome that or to dominate tonight? It was the 3-point shot. 40 combined threes over the past 2 nights. 22 from DeAnthony Melton and Desmond Bane combined. I'm going to get into the history in just a second, but let's first talk about the guy that got to witness it firsthand up close. How impressive was it? How fun was it to see this team just kicking ass from 3?
It's, you know, Shawn, I've been hard on them about the shooting. You know, I've written a couple stories that basically said, you know, shooting could be the downfall of this team.
Telling the truth. Telling the absolute truth.
Yeah, but they have really kind of, you know, lately turned a corner. And we'll see, if they completely turn the corner or it's just, they're peeking around the corner and they're still on the same street or something. But they look good. And when they shoot the ball like this, I mean, we know you have the stats with the assist and the 10 made threes. When they shoot the ball this well, they're as good as probably anybody. And that's probably including the Suns, So DeAnthony Melton is the guy who I think is just really taking his game up to another level. And I go back to just one play in particular in Houston that was just so funny to me, just seeing it, when he and Tyus Jones were out on the break. Tyus Jones was in the corner, he was on the wing, and DeAnthony Melton gets the ball in transition, pass to him. Clearly, Tyus Jones is right beside him, wide open, and this is sixth grade basketball rules. You swing the ball to the, turn down a good shot for an even better shot. DeAnthony Melton let that ball go, shot it. Tyus Jones was screaming at him, pass the ball. And he's laughing on the way back up the court. Tyus Jones is laughing with him. And, it turned into a little joke. And after the game, he goes, I didn't even see him. That's how locked in he is right now, Shawn. He is completely tunnel vision. You watch when he's shooting the ball, it's going up. It's not too much looking around, who's over here, who's over there. If he has a good look, it's going up. And he's making a lot of them right now. And when DeAnthony Melton shoots the ball like this, you're lengthening the bench, because Desmond Bane, you know what you're getting right now. Tyus Jones, pretty consistent from three-point range all season as well. Those two guys, steady Eddie. What DeAnthony Melton is doing right now, he's shooting the ball pretty much as well as Desmond Bane. And that's why these last couple of games, this team looks like a well-oiled machine from three-point range. And the points in the paint, they're not changing. They're still there, Shawn. So you combine those two things. As a defense, what do you do? Like Desmond Bane said when we talked to him after the game, I'd hate to guard us. That was his words.
Absolutely. And what it does is that when they're shooting the three like this to complement their production in the paint, Damichael, they become a team that then finds 3-4 different ways that they can beat you. If you as a defense are trying to counter one, they're confident in being able to come back in the other. But before we get more into Desmond Bane, you're right about this. Parker Fleming, friend of the show, writes for Grizzly Bear Blues. He's been on the show. Phenomenal talent, as we all have come to witness. The thing that I'll say is that he asked a very good question the other night, talking about the fact that DeAnthony Melton, it just seems as if he is becoming more consistent. When he is at his best, it's almost as if there's no thinking. There is catch, there's launch. There's catch, there's launch. Don't grade my shooting form, Damichael. It's horrible. But my point is that it's one smooth motion. And the reason why is that when he's able to repeat it, much like we know Desmond Bane is the master at doing that. But when DeAnthony Melton is catching that ball, shooting it all in one fluid motion, and is repeating it, he is an absolute stunner as a three-point shooter. And it's great to see right now. And to your point that you made before the show, as I mentioned before as well, if DeAnthony Melton is doing this off the bench, especially early in the game, the Grizzlies are going to come out. They're going to punch teams in the mouth, set their tone even in the playoffs, and that is going to be a huge, critical component of them being able to advance in the postseason like they want to.
He's an X factor. He is an absolute X factor for this team. And I'm on the record, Shawn. I said when he was struggling, I'm talking when he came back from COVID and just throughout, his inconsistencies just over the last couple months. I'm on the record basically saying, look, I don't care how he shoots the ball. You don't keep this guy off the floor, because at the end of the day, he is so impactful defensively. He is the guy who's getting these deflections where you talk about, a lot of these transition points. And because, like I've said, before, there are nights he shoots 2 of 10 in the stat sheet, but I look at that 2 of 10 as probably 4 of 12 because he forces a couple steals that leads to easy transition baskets. Things like that. You get those things with DeAnthony Melton that you get with more than with other players. So when you factor in, the defense is there still. Last couple games, he's still very active on the defensive end. When he shoots the ball like this, I mean, that almost completes the bench, because Tyus Jones is steady, man. He's probably, we've talked about it. We're going to have that conversation where we really dig into these backup point guards around the league and really rank him, but he's up there. So you got Tyus Jones, And you got Brandon Clark, who I think, is developing into one of the best backup bigs in the league. He could start on a lot of teams. Kyle Anderson has been doing this a while. He played for some really good Spurs teams, and he got minutes. And he's great defensively as well. So what DeAnthony Melton is doing is solidifying the bench. And it's also, it's lengthening the options that Taylor Jenkins have. It's making defenses think really hard about what they want to take away, because you play the Grizzlies, of course, they're going to try to pound you in the paint. But when they're shooting the ball like that, because you know what Desmond Bane's going to do. Tyus Jones, you can't leave him open. And then DeAnthony Melton, there's not much thought. Like you said, it's one motion. What he's doing is very much being an X factor in his play. Just like, you can say this about 3 or 4 guys. I mean, but still, his play, the way he plays will be a real big determining factor in how far his team goes. And we've seen it just the last couple games. I don't think they win that Nets game possibly without him shooting the ball like that. And, today they didn't need him to shoot the ball like that against the Pacers. But still, it's just good to see him being in a rhythm, because he did it against the Rockets, and then he did it, against the Nets. And now he did it against the Pacers. So even a bigger test going to be coming up with the Bucks, but he's in a rhythm right now.
Speaking of being in a rhythm, you're absolutely right about DeAnthony Melton. But listen, we've got to hit on it, because for me being a stats guy, it has been an absolute joy over the past 2 nights. Let's break it down real quickly. Just the historic things that have happened over the past 2 games. Okay, over the past 2 nights, within 48 hours, Desmond Bane has become the all-time single-season 3-point leader in 3-point makes in Grizzlies franchise history. The Grizzlies last night, on the same night Desmond Bane did that, they set a new franchise record for most threes by a roster in a single season. And then what do they do after doing both those things last night? They come back in the fourth quarter tonight, set a new record for most threes by a Grizzlies team in a quarter in franchise history. The past 2 nights, most threes in back-to-back games by the Grizzlies at 40. Again, 22 of those came from DeAnthony Melton as well as Desmond Bane. Last night, Desmond Bane became the first player in NBA history to have at least 30 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 threes in a game in under 25 minutes of play. You want to talk about dominance? That's the dominance that you're looking at. And the whole point that I'm getting at, the reason why all of this is amazing is because, again, we talk about how good this Grizzlies team is without Ja Morant. They're only getting better. They're getting more consistent in the areas that they need to be able to enjoy time in the playoffs. And the one other thing that I'll encourage you to do, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, at a podcast at some point, if you want to get an idea of just how special, rare, and impactful Desmond Bane has been in his first 2 years in the league, go compare his offensive numbers to a guy by the name of Klay Thompson. Go do it. You will be surprised at how similar those numbers certainly are. Damichael, again, you witnessed it. It's crazy how much history, you see it. You knew it was coming last night. You didn't know it was coming tonight. And it just absolutely has been amazing to see this level of basketball and see just why the Grizzlies are so good is exactly why they're sitting here and rewriting the record books basically for Grizzlies franchise history.
Shawn, they're locked in. And you talk about that first quarter. Just that first quarter against the Pacers was insane.
Raining threes, just raining.
Raining threes. And it's 10 made threes. And one thing I always take away from just watching teams when they have those explosive type quarters, when it's one player who gets hot, okay, just take that guy away and things will be fine. Like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson have those type quarters. Okay, zoom in on him. Well, in this case, Jaren Jackson made multiple threes in that first quarter. DeAnthony Melton made multiple threes in that first quarter. Tyus Jones made multiple threes in that first quarter. And then, of course, Desmond Bane made multiple threes. You had 4 players make multiple threes in that first quarter. Who do you stop? Of course you want to stop Desmond Bane. But Jaren Jackson was making threes. Tyus Jones made his. And that makes it so tough for a defense, Shawn.
The thing that stands out is that while it's going, 3 straight games with 15 or more made threes. And I'll remind you, this is not something that we've not seen before. If you want to go back a year, the Grizzlies' longest streak of 15 or more made threes in consecutive games is 4, okay? They did it on 2 separate occasions in April of 2021. They're doing it again 1 year later right now. This Grizzlies team is getting hot at the right time, and we hope it continues certainly as they take on Milwaukee tomorrow night in Memphis. And, of course, before we get to that, one other thing that we want to talk about, we talk about these moments, right? We talk about all these great moments that we see around the NBA. And, of course, the source that has taken the NBA by storm is NBA Top Shot. It's the officially licensed NFT of the NBA. Connect with a community of hundreds of thousands of NBA fans as a natural progression of fantasy sports, a way to upgrade your experience as an NBA fan. This is the future of what being an NBA fan looks like. It's part. Basically, you've got trading cards akin to the stock market for NBA. Every day, millions of dollars worth of NFTs are traded back and forth between tens of thousands of NBA fans around the world. Investors including Michael Jordan and Kevin Durant, not to mention Will Smith. There are a lot of NBA players in the community like Tyrese Halliburton, Cole Anthony, and Harrison Barnes. If you were to tell someone in 1916 that your piece of cardboard with Babe Ruth's face on it would make you a millionaire one day, everyone would think you're crazy. This is the opening tip-off of a digital age, and the NBA's officially licensed NFT will be a big part of that digital age. Top Shots moments can get you access to events and can be used in fantasy mini games as well on a regular basis. NBA Top Shot is the future of being an NBA fan. Own officially licensed rare NFTs of the greatest sports moments from NBA history. Sign up today at lockedon.nbatopshot.com. Other thing I can tell you about, though, is Built Bar. Listen, we all love Top Shot. We all want to be a part of it. But I'm going to tell you this, I love Built Bar. Now, I know that despite covering the Memphis Grizzlies, the one thing that Damichael Cole loves to do is to include a Built Bar as part of his day. Now, whether it be in the morning or it be in the afternoon as a snack, Damichael Cole's going to enjoy his Built Bar, as I will as well. But the point is that if you enjoy Built Bar and you enjoy options, go to Built.com, choose from over 18 different flavors. Also, make sure you put in the promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your next order of Built Bar and make your day better. Morning, afternoon, lunch, whatever it may be, check out Built Bar today. Damichael Cole, it has been an absolutely awesome week with you when it comes to Locked On Grizzlies. Your coverage has been excellent in what has been a big week off the court, if you will, with ESPN. But as you know, we've got some pretty interesting games coming up next week, all about covering the Grizzlies' push through the last tough part of their schedule as they make that playoff push. But Damichael, so we've gotten past these 2 nights. You mentioned before the show you're looking forward to a day of rest, a day to take a bit of a break. But the Grizzlies get right back to it on Saturday night. So we know that Ja Morant is likely going to be out for the game. But the other big news as well is that the Grizzlies may get a couple of breaks come their way when it comes to their opponents. And one break that may be there, be up in the air, obviously, just being Friday. But Giannis and Chris Middleton, Washington, on last night. Will they play tomorrow night? We'll wait and see. But when you look, you just talked about the Bucks, right? You just talked about a team that Jenkins, the Grizzlies know well. But Damichael, when you look at this matchup between the Bucks and the Grizzlies, what stands out to you, even if Giannis and Middleton may not be able to play versus a Grizzlies team that doesn't have
ball pressure? It's something that the Bucks really are good at. You just watched lately. I mean, I really paid attention to how teams try to pressure a team like the Grizzlies, because conventional wisdom says, why would you speed up a team that already plays fast? And when you pressure the ball, you pick up these guys, 70 feet away from the basket. That's what you're doing. And a couple games ago, Dennis Schroeder, Houston Rockets, was trying to speed up. He was speeding up, some of the guys on the Grizzlies, specifically Tyus Jones, and it just wasn't working out. It wasn't working out. Well, in this case, you're going to have Drew Holiday, arguably the best perimeter defender in basketball. I think he stamped himself in that NBA Finals with the way I just remember, Chris Paul was bringing the ball up the court, and it just got to the point where Chris Paul would just throw the ball ahead, someone else or Devin Booker. He was handcuffing guys. Now the Grizzlies are down one more ball handler in this game. So, like I said, in most games, it much as it will against a team like the Bucks, who have Drew Holiday, who's going to hound you. He's going to hound Tyus Jones, probably going to tire him out a little bit. And when Tyus is out of the game, Desmond Bane has held his own, in that point guard role. But there's a difference between holding your own against guys from the Pacers and holding your own against Drew Holiday, who gives, we just mentioned Chris Paul, Lonzo Ball. He gives guys who are pretty much elite ball handlers trouble. So I want to see how they handle that, because he knows Ja's not playing. He knows he's going to test out Tyus, and then when they bring in Desmond Bane, to play that backup role, and we've seen Melton and a couple of those other guys get some backup point guard minutes too. How are they going to handle that pressure? I think that's a big key. And of course, there are all the other little factors as well with, the Bucks' defense and their rebounding and how it matches up with the Grizzlies and all of that. But I just want to see how they handle the ball pressure, Shawn.
So we talk about a lot of fun things, Jenkins coming from the Bucks, his relationship with Budenholzer, the small markets and all this different stuff, the Bucks winning a title. But let's also not overlook another fun narrative in this game, and it's going to be a very fun narrative to talk about over the next 48 hours. So the Bucks come in to the game top 5 in three-pointers made per game, top 5 in three-point percentage. And one of the more underrated factors in that is this guy who used to play here in Memphis. Oh, his name is Grayson Allen. Now think about this for a second. You hear this whole narrative, and I'm going to hone in on this, right? You hear this whole narrative, Desmond Bane impressing as a rookie last year, DeAnthony Melton's breakout, and yet Taylor Jenkins is loyal to making sure Grayson Allen gets his playing time and starts. And I don't want to take anything away from Grayson Allen. He was a very good shooter last year, but he's trading in the offseason. You see Desmond Bane erupt like he has DeAnthony Melton get going. But there is the reunion. We've already seen Jonas Valanciunas do it, but the homecoming, the reunion of Grayson Allen coming back to Memphis, that is happening tomorrow night, and it's going to be fun to see, especially if Giannis and Middleton are not playing. It's going to be fun to see a little bit of a three-point shootout, I think, between Bane, Melton, and Grayson Allen. But Grayson Allen's homecoming is going to be another fun narrative on this game tomorrow night.
That is a sneaky fun one, Shawn, and just I think the Grizzlies, the decision, the trade has been pretty much, verified as the right decision with the way broken out this season. But you look over there in Milwaukee, Grayson Allen isn't having a bad season himself. Grayson Allen's season has been good enough that they traded what a lot of people felt like was a cornerstone piece for them last season in Dante Damichael. They traded him away, and he was, a primary piece to that championship team even before they won. So that was a sign of confidence right there that Grayson Allen is their guy. It's going to be fun to watch because we're going to see a lot of Grayson Allen matched up against Desmond Bane. And if you know anything about Grayson Allen, he has an edge to him, and he's going to have that. Desmond Bane's my guy, but this is the guy that has got my old spot. And Desmond Bane plays with a chip on his shoulder. Desmond Bane's he talks about having a chip on his shoulder throughout his career. So that might be a sneaky fun one-on-one matchup. You've heard me say it. I love one-on-one matchups. That's the fun part of the game within the game. You love the point guard matchups. You love the big man matchups. You love the best player versus the best player matchups. Right here, we just have a good storyline of the former starter versus the starter now, who is really taking his spot and ran with it. So this is going to be fun. I can't wait to see it.
Absolutely. And this, again, is the start of a 5-game in 6-game stretch where the Grizzlies are going to be playing the Bucks Saturday. They're going to be playing the Suns. And over the next week after that, or the Warriors Monday, which is a huge game. And then the week after that, Spurs, Suns, Nuggets, and Jazz all coming up. So this is going to be the best place for you to lock in. We'll be locked in right here on Locked On Grizzlies. Obviously, going into Sunday night, recapping the Bucks game. Obviously, looking forward to the Warriors game. Of course, we'll have all the coverage and insight from Damichael to Cole, the wonderful mind, as the commercial appeals beat writer for the Memphis Grizzlies and your host here at Locked On Grizzlies, along with myself, Shawn Coleman. Been hosting here now for 2 years, credential media member over at Grizzly Bear Blues. The whole point is, the reason why we're here is because we love covering the Grizzlies, but more than anything, we love being a fan of arguably one of the best teams in the NBA. And while I won't speak for Damichael, the smile on his face right now, that smile, he knows that this Grizzlies team is going to have a special outcome this season. So, Damichael, you got anything else for us as we wrap up?
Shawn, it's about to be a fun couple weeks, and it's an intriguing couple weeks. You know, you just looked at the Grizzlies lose Ja Morant for a couple weeks, but Stephen Curry is out kind of that same, time frame. So there's no excuse. Golden State fans can't say, oh, we lost Curry. That's how they got the 3 seed. Well, the Grizzlies just lost Ja Morant. The Grizzlies have played really well. They're playing better without their star player than Golden State is playing without theirs at this point. So it's funny how I think a lot of us spent about a month building up that game, and we'll get more into it, a couple shows from now. But we spent a lot of time building up that game, and now Ja Morant and Steph Curry, the 2 biggest stars, aren't even going to be playing in it. But this next stretch, it's going to be really intriguing to see how it finishes out. And we as media members, and the fans, we want to see how this 2-3 seed stuff plays out. But these 2 teams, quite frankly, it doesn't look like they really care. So we'll see how that plays out as well.
The other thing I can tell you is that going through this tough stretch that the Grizzlies are going to go through without Ja Morant as they're trying to secure that 2 seed, 2 things. Number one, I think they're going to show why even against other playoff teams, they can hold their own because of the depth and quality of depth that they have. But number 2, and the biggest thing of all, is that it's going to take guys stepping up in playoff type atmospheres on a consistent basis to get where they want to go. And that's going to do nothing but benefit us when it comes to the playoffs. Folks, this has been another fun show. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great week. Congrats to Damichael Cole on all his great work. He'll be back with me next week as obviously we dive into the game against the Bucks. Obviously, looking at the preview against a huge game against the Warriors and any other info that comes along the lines when it comes to Ja Morant. For Damichael Cole, my name's Shawn Coleman. Have a great night. We'll talk to you again soon here on the Locked On Grizzlies podcast.